Kyle Klingman with Track Wrestling. We're going down south, down to Louisiana. North DeSoto head wrestling coach Dustin Burton is with us. How are you, Dustin?
I'm doing good. Thank you.
Give us the landscape of Louisiana. It's fun to talk about some of the guys that have come out of there. Daniel Cormier is from Louisiana. Kerry Bowman's from Louisiana. But do you feel like people know about these guys and appreciate these guys and what they accomplished?
Yeah, I think so, especially DC, with the MMA world that he's living in. But, maybe Kerry Bowman's a lot of people don't know about. Maybe some do. It's kind of hard to guess. I'm lived in Louisiana, born in Louisiana, so, of course, I know about them. But everywhere I go, I hear their name quite a bit. I think that they're famous other than the Bayou.
Is it an overwhelming football state? Are you battling that all the time?
It is. Louisiana, Texas, Arkansas, those are hotbeds for football. I don't personally battle it. At North DeSoto, we have a real good athletic director that, he stands up for all sports. But it is a common, it's something that's talked about in Louisiana is battling with football. And I believe that's why we kind of try to split the seasons the best we can, because a lot of football players fill a lot of wrestling teams. Can
you sell football players on the value to wrestle?
We can, and that gets better every year. Especially in the upper weights. And in my opinion, I think Louisiana defensive ends and linebackers that are 240 pounds and athletic make the best heavyweight 220-pound wrestlers. If they can be taught how to wrestle and get with the technician, man, those guys' future could be big in wrestling, not just football.
What is the North DeSoto landscape? Is it a private school?
We're a public school. We're kindergarten through 12th grade with four different principals, actually. But we're all on one campus. We have 4 facilities. We have a lower elementary, which is a kindergarten through 2nd grade. And then we have upper elementary, 3rd through 5th grade. We have our middle school, 6th through 8th grade, and then our high school, 9th through 12th. And we're all on one big campus. So it's kind of our own little university right here in Stonewall, Louisiana.
I see you got a lot of wrestling backdrop there, and clearly you're a wrestling junkie. How do you get people to buy into wrestling and be as passionate about it as you are?
North Louisiana is actually the smaller portion of wrestling in Louisiana. We're right here on the Texas line, and it all started with, for me, was a family history. Back in the early 70s, late 60s, my grandfather was actually the first person to start a wrestling program in North Louisiana. And he started at Houghton High School, Airline High School, and then a few more evolved with his guidance. And he was known for that. He was he's a pioneer of North Louisiana wrestling, a Hall of Famer. And then my dad kind of followed his footsteps and helped start a few programs. And it wasn't until 1999 that there was the first youth wrestling program in North Louisiana within 150 miles. And that was in 99. My father started a program called Northwest Warriors. They're still going today. My brother actually runs that program. And we collected kids from all over the region, in the parish that program was held in. And it's just kind of kicked off since then. So I felt like I needed to kind of, if not match it, make my own mark and leave my own name. And in North DeSoto, they never had wrestling, so they kind of just bought into what we were doing. We showed them one of the big things we told them was, hey, if you're going to wrestle, it's something you got to completely buy into. You got to be a fan of it. We need mom to be the loud, crazy women in the stands. We need the dads to help the kids with the nutrition and the fun, all, the whole 9 yards. We got everybody involved, brother, sister, you name it. And it turned into a family affair here that everybody just loves wrestling now.
You brought some kids to Beast of the East. What's your philosophy on scheduling and how you get competition throughout the season?
Um, I'm a big believer in you're only as good as your room. I'm a believer in what you compete with is you're going to form to. I feel like if I compete with a typical, not taking anything away from anybody, but a typical, top 4 team in North Louisiana and I'm with them every weekend, that's as good as I'm going to be. If I compete at the toughest tournaments in Louisiana every weekend, well, top of the Louisiana is as good as I'm going to be. If I take my kids to national caliber tournaments every weekend, well, eventually they're going to adapt and be on a national caliber scene and be able to compete with that. So that's one of my philosophies as far as scheduling.
Do you think that the kids respond to that? Do they like going to the national tournaments and testing themselves against the best?
I believe so. I think so. We started in our youth wrestling in NDWA, North DeSoto Wrestling Academy, and we preach it while they're in that developing, growing stage with the academy, middle school, elementary, and the exposure. We talk about it with wrestling camps, and I think once they get to high school and they're going to commit to high school wrestling, we hold them accountable for competing with the best and pushing to develop to that stage. Because if you're not, we're not achieving the goals that we have in mind at North DeSoto.
And you have some kids going to some college programs now too, that you've had a good class.
We do. We're very fortunate. 2 seniors and both of them going to compete in college. We're very excited about that. The first 2 as well from North DeSoto.
What goes into that? Like, do you want them to be thinking about competing beyond wrestling or beyond high school, excuse me, not beyond wrestling?
Yeah, we do. It's in their everyday wrestling world. It's talked about in the locker room. It's talked about on the bus. It's talked about in the hotels. It's talked about on the airplane to the Beast of the East. We try to expose that, to them that, most importantly, hey, you can further your education through the avenue of wrestling. And also, we try to have as much fun as we can. And I think that they enjoy it so much their senior year, they're just ready to go and continue it on a different level. So we definitely push it. We don't push past our limits, but we try to make that a pipeline for the kids for their future when high school wrestling's over with.
How do you get them to learn about those guys behind you, like the Jordan Burroughs of the world, the Kyle Snyders, the Helen Maroulises? How do you teach them about that history?
Track wrestling, flow wrestling, YouTube, you name it. We're fans of wrestling, man. We try to bring some guys in. We try to bring people in that are on that level. We've never had a Jordan Burroughs here, but we have had Kendall Cross. We have had Robbie Waller in the All-American Wrestling Camps out of Latrobe, Pennsylvania. We brought some Oklahoma State guys in as individuals. And we just try to surround our kids around caliber of people like that.
You have a unique background, went to junior college, then went to NAI Lindenwood. What did that do for you that allows you to translate that into what you're doing today as a coach?
Mainly for me, it was the toughness that I learned in college, the programs that I went to, that I think that was the biggest thing that I brought with me as a coach. I was real fortunate as a youth wrestler and high school wrestler to be around, in my opinion, one of the better technicians in our area, which was my father. And it wasn't so much that I learned whole lot of wrestling in college, but I learned how to drill, and I learned the mental toughness that carried me not so much in wrestling, but as a person, as a leader, and the business side of things, everything, just making sure, hey, with these kids growing up, we're teaching them respect and teaching them the right things, and and teaching them how to be leaders, by example, not just in wrestling, but in the classroom and everything they do. I think that toughness from those colleges that I wrestled at really carried over into an attitude standpoint that I preach every day with my guys.
What's the Louisiana high school state tournament like?
Man, it's fun for us. We enjoy it. It is typically it's been held right here in North Louisiana, 15 minutes from my house. The past few years, they just moved it to Baton Rouge, and we're okay with that. We're excited about that because it's 3.5, 4 hours away. It's just another trip, man. The kids will get to experience that hotel scene and wake up in the morning and eat your breakfast and go across to the Coliseum and wrestle. We do that every weekend, so it's kind of unnatural actually to sleep in your own bed and go to a big tournament like that.
Is your goal to win state? Is that the end game for you? If you travel outside of the state, what's the way you kind of peak them at the right time?
Well, it is. Our ultimate goal is to win a team state championship. We were second last year. We lost by, I believe, 2 matches. A few points we were behind. And, I think we were very prepared for that. But as far as goals in North DeSoto, winning the state championship is absolutely a goal for us. The big goals, there's goals inside the box, there's goals outside the box. We try to obviously further the wrestling on the collegiate level and by gaining scholarships. So those kids that do want to go to college, which we push, can do that through the avenue of wrestling. And, it's all about having fun. But the process for it is, it's the same as the youth program. We try to perfect our techniques the best as possible at the beginning of the season, and not a whole lot of live wrestling, not a whole lot of pushing. You hear it every day in the South when a football player goes into the wrestling room. Come on, you got to get in the wrestling shape, man. It's wrestling season. I'm not a believer in that. I've seen too many kids burn out. I've been a kid that burned out like that, and I just don't believe in it. I think you bring your kids in beginning of the season and you tell them the goals and you ask them their personal goals, and then you start having fun, and you start, depending on the level, we're talking high school, we start perfecting our techniques and maybe adding a few more in that core system, that fundamentals that we use, we start just crisping them and make them the best they can be. Later on in the season, we start picking up in our drilling and we talk about attitude, and then 30 days out, we're getting after it and getting our kids' lungs opened up and attitude built. So that way the state tournament comes around, they're not saying this is my last weigh-in. They're saying, I'm ready to go.
Who's a bigger wrestling fan, you or your wife?
Oh, man, that's tough. That's tough. Got to be me. She says she is, but it's got to be me. It's got to be. It's the only thing that I really do, or know. My kids say it all the time. Sarpy actually tells me, he says, Coach, I'm going to listen to everything you say about wrestling, but when it comes to anything else, I don't know. I got to question it. I'm like, okay.
I mean, if your wife was on here, what would be her claim that she's a bigger wrestling fan than you? Does she have a case?
She does. She does. She's just like me. She's always on track wrestling. She's always on flow wrestling. She's doing everything wrestling. She'll tell you that I'm committed on the mat and she's committed outside the mat. That's the rulers of the team, and I disagree, but I think she would too.
What kind of things does she do to support the program?
Oh man, I would have to say the biggest thing is believing in me and backing me. She's obviously a team mom, even though we don't have a child on the high school team, or we do have a couple in the academy. Those feed together, but you name it, man. There's all kind of things. We have a board of a president, a vice president, a secretary, treasurer that handle our 501c, and she's always working with them. She's doing the extra work that everybody can't do or doesn't have time to do. And most importantly, she's there for me, backing me. Wrestling can get emotional on the level that we're on, and there can be some tough decisions that have to be made. And I applaud her because she is always standing beside me. And when I make a decision, whether she helped me with it or she didn't, she's patting me on the back, letting me know that I made the right decision, and let's move forward and be the best we can be.